Welcome, everybody, yet another episode of the Wrestling vs. the World podcast. You're going to join your day, sweet, if not, what the hell ever. So, I had to make this episode a little bit on a rush, because stuff's been going on, but it is time now for episode 188, looking at the Finding Hulk Hogan documentary. I think this is one of the last Hulk Hogan topics that I've got listed for the podcast, thankfully, because I'm tired of diving into the Hogan world. So, this whole thing was an A&E documentary that was released in November 2010, more specifically November 17, 2010, where this whole documentary takes a look through Hulk Hogan's life with dealing with his divorce and trying to make a personal comeback with his personal life, as well as signing with TNA Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. They don't look a whole lot into that, but they look more in behind the scenes stuff. But let's look into this, and there's some things I gotta criticize a little bit. So by this point in 2010, by the time this documentary is releasing, Hogan's 56, 57 years old. And it acknowledged that by this point his marriage had already fallen apart 2 to 3 years prior. So they start showing the original house that you were familiar with Hogan Knows Best. And at this point, it is completely empty. And there's text, friggin' words on the screen that are giving updates and little tidbits here. And it's noting that Hogan made hundreds of $1 million with 3 different decades in wrestling, only to lose it all within the span of 3 years. And I'm watching this and I'm wondering when the filming truly took place, because we remember during Brooke Knows Best, which was going throughout 2008, 2009, Linda occupied the house. We saw her in that house and everything as a tenant, while Hulk took the beach house. Because the original big house that they had throughout the last 2 seasons of Hogan Knows Best was nowhere to be seen because they had to get rid of it. So it's making you wonder, when did Linda vacate the premises while they were filming this documentary? Because I don't know if she was still with her boyfriend Charlie by this point. So it's a little weird here. But Hogan mentions that Linda wasn't part of the lawsuit with Nick's accident that happens in 2007, so it was just him and Nick being held responsible, and that by this point he was no longer a millionaire because the finances just bad. And it's understandable because, you had the divorce, your legal stuff, and he hadn't been with WWE in the last couple of years because his last appearance by this point had been the December 10, 2007 episode of Raw, which was the Raw 15th anniversary. I think he defended Hornswoggle from an attack by the great Khali. That was the whole thing. So this was, and that was only a few weeks after Linda filed for divorce. Now, he also states in the documentary that he would wrestle 300 to 400 times a year, so that's a bit of a verbal difference compared to when people say that he states that he wrestled 400 days a year while traveling the international line. So even Hogan can't keep his story straight. Is that 400 times or 400 days? Make up your mind. So he starts looking at his return to the ring to try to start to financially recover, because it's understandable, you gotta work to make money. And how it's still tough for him to move around due to his history of injuries. They show him working out in the gym and saying he's had injuries that he never recovered from. You work hard, because that was a whole mindset back in the day. You just suck it up and keep going because you don't want to lose your spot, brother. And it also states that Linda and Hulk's marriage was deteriorating despite their public image, which is obvious by what was portrayed during the last season of Hogan Knows Best when the fighting started to show on TV. Whether it was scripted or not or whatever, we could tell there was a taste of that, because they even talked about it where the family they were just like, oh, maybe we should just be divorced. Oh, I've had it. We keep fighting. But one thing that Hogan also states here, it doesn't sound like he outright denies the cheating claim that Linda aimed towards him, which she said was a catalyst for her filing for divorce. And Hogan also stated that he never really felt wanted by Linda based on her behavior, never saying that she loved him or even touched him or anything. Which also feels weird, because that also kind of goes a bit against what he said in Season 4 of Hogan Knows Best. I think it was the first episode where he stated that her negative behavior and anger and everything turned him on. So it's just he criticizes her negative behavior on one point, but then also beforehand said that it turned him on, that he liked that. Probably because he was so used to it. So it's what was the breaking point for you to realize that wasn't a good thing, Hulk? Really? So then the discussion of Nick's accident comes along with that happening in August. Nick got taken into custody in early November, and then 13 days after he got taken into custody was when Linda filed for divorce. And Hulk says that he found out through a phone call from his lawyer, which I think I heard in more than one documentary, so that's a little still consistent there. The time afterwards, with coming to a completely empty house and not having phone calls answered by anyone, really affected him, because he's saying Linda left, he came home, there's nothing there, nobody's answering his calls, he's getting worried. And then comes a period that's dark, that I'm going to add my own personal twist to, because there's stuff I can relate to, but there's also some things with the timeline that doesn't exactly add up. So Hulk says he had a 3-day period where things were so dark that he could have taken his own life, which is a polarizing topic, saying like he would talk to his friends and BS them saying that he's alright, but in reality he was taking like Xanax and heavily drinking and had a gun with him while he was there home alone. Now there was a point here that hits close to home because I've probably mentioned in the past that I did have my own personal battle where I was close to taking my own life back in 2019, so I can agree with what Hulk says where when you get to that point and you realize you have your way out right in front of you, that you can pretty much be like, you're like in hypnotic trance. Like you're staring at your way out there knowing that if you wanted to go out, your way out's right there in front of you. So it's like, I know this from personal experience, that being true like he's stating here. But now this part doesn't quite add up. This next part doesn't quite add up with the documentary here based on what I found, because he's saying that while he was away, like stuck at home alone 3 days, he got a call from Layla Ali with the opportunity to host American Gladiators. Now this is the part that feels confusing because he was saying this was happening while he was home alone 3 days after coming home to an empty house after Linda left. But I did a bit of research because of the web archive, because thankfully Wikipedia had like a reference link, like a hyperlink to one of the parts here in like Hogan's Wikipedia page that I checked on, and it stated that things don't add up, because the timeline here says that Linda filed for divorce from Hogan around mid to late-ish November of 2007. However, the Internet Archive has an article from Sports Feature Communications announcing that Hogan had been signed to American Gladiators in early October 2007. So this was a little over a month after Nick had his accident, a month before he got arrested, get taken into custody to get ready for his trial, and a month and a half before Linda even filed for divorce. So that's a little weird. He's saying the call happened while he's in an empty home, but yet that happened after the news broke that he signed with American Gladiators. Like, I can't wrap my head around it. But he credits Layla for getting him into a church, which helped essentially help him become a born-again Christian, turn his life around, positive thinking, and he even became engaged to his then-girlfriend Jennifer in December 2009, which it's honestly a shame that these two got divorced since then. Because it's like, you see how she was with him on Brooke Knows Best, and then stuff with this documentary. It seemed like she was the kind of person that he needed, but yet it didn't work out within the last couple of years. Now, he also says that even when he was with Jennifer, like, she helped become like a positive beacon in his life and helped him laugh. And saying that his kids noticed, like, oh, Dad, you're laughing. You haven't laughed in years. I mean, yeah, because you look at the kind of person that Linda was around that time, like, constantly spewing the negative energy. And you even hear how she is still toward Hulk to this day, saying, oh, Hulk ruined my life. Like, Linda, you're no saint either, honey. Then they finally start diving into the part about his time with TNA, signing November 2009, initially as an executive, and how he didn't genuinely enjoy being with WWE, he just felt like a labor, while with TNA he felt excited. Yeah, I'm sure you were excited with all the changes that he helped spawn into the company that kind of alienated the fan base. So, then Hulk gets shown to be in Brian Knobbs' wrestling school called Nastyville, which doesn't seem like the ideal person to get training from in the wrestling business, to be honest. Especially when you see the person involved and how the person never really stood out as a singles guy outside of the hardcore division in freaking WCW. Well then Hulk, he decides he has to get back in the ring to help get him more financially secure again, and to try to help propel TNA, which I highly doubt was ever really much of a priority to him. But he's talking to the doctors about potential about getting back into the ring and the risks and everything, and the doctor is pretty wary, because it's like Hogan's been noted to have constant back problems and back surgeries that he's been constantly needing, and his back is in such a bad state from constant wear and tear for 30 years that if it gets any more serious, that it would require Hulk to take 3 back surgeries after this. One of them he won't live through. And I think I remember hearing about that before. Despite the doctor's advice, Hulk still decides, hey, gotta get in the ring, brother. So, March 2010 was when he gets back in the ring, and this was March 8, 2010. So this was the first episode of TNA to actively and continually be on Monday nights to go against Raw. Unfortunately, the show did not do good ratings because it dropped from the January 4, 2010 episode, because January 4, 2010, they got a 1.5 in the Nielsen ratings, While this episode, when they started to go head-to-head with Raw constantly, it got a .98. And it just kept going downhill from there. It's like, yeah, they had a slight rebound a couple of weeks later from compared to March 15, but then afterwards it was just like, big mess. So it didn't even do good compared to the January 4th episode. So he gets back in the ring, he has a match, and even showed where he keeps his razor blade, which is hidden in his mouth, which, one wrong move, it's going to be pretty risky there, Hulk. I think that's why wrestlers usually rely on their blade either being in wrist tape or even being handed by a referee. Because that in your mouth, I would not risk it. So it shows that the match goes on without a hitch. He had another back surgery. And I think we saw that even with, like, in TNA, because away from the ring, he'd be an executive, and we saw times where he was on crutches in TNA, and then the whole immortal thing happened. Oh, 10, 10, 10. And thankfully he was able to recover from that, so yay for that. But yeah, this was an odd documentary, because it's like, you see Hogan, like, I'm glad that Hogan was able to make a turnaround, even though he's a garbage human being, but it's just like, to see somebody make a turnaround from such setbacks is a good thing to see. You don't want to see somebody, like, drive themselves to the end. But there's some questionable things. Like I said, with the timeline that was given for when he take his own life and the house being empty and Layla and American Gladiators, that's a thing that does not add up. Honestly. But yeah. Thankfully, that should be the end of my Hogan stuff. Maybe I'll have one way down the line, but I can't remember right off the top of my head. So, let me know in the comment section below, what did you all think about this Finding Hulk Hogan documentary? Because like I said, I know it's about 14 years old, but I'm sure people have seen it since then. Let me know what you all thought in the comment section below. If you enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, folks, please remember, leave a like, subscribe to the bell, turn on if you listen on YouTube, or follow if you're listening to this podcast on any other server that the podcast is available on. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, folks. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out, and good day, everybody.